Hello and welcome to Clone Wars Weekly, the only show that broadcasts directly from someplace out back. I am your host, Ronan, and joining me are my fellow co-hosts, Batil and Quentin. Unfortunately, Rory was not able to show up today, but we have a very, very special treat for you today. The always fantastic Zack HANKS, voice of Garnac the Trandoshan from the Clone Wars Season 3 finale arc.
Hello, Zack here.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
We'll have a few questions for you if you don't mind, because that's how we roll.
Okay.
Batil, would you like to go first?
No, I'll start this off. Right. Zack.
Mm-hmm.
So how old were you when you decided you wanted to become like a voice actor? Like what age were you, would you say?
You know, that's actually, I can't really answer that question because there was no moment when I decided, okay, I want to be a voice actor and I'm gonna pursue this. Well, actually, you know what? That's not really true. You know what? Let me put it this way. I would say when I decided I wanted to be a voice actor and decided to start really pursuing it professionally, I would have been, let me do the math, it would have been in 2007, so it would have been 31. Now, that's not to say that the thought of being a voice actor hadn't crossed my mind before that. Really, as soon as I started working in the profession, pursuing work in the profession, at the age of 22, I was open to doing any kind of work. So if you had asked me if I was willing or interested in doing voiceover work, I would have said, hell yes, absolutely. But it wasn't until I was 31 that I sort of had the training, the background, the experience, the skills, and the wherewithal to make the decision that I'm going to start pursuing voice acting in a really serious way.
That's interesting, that is. So do you remember the first role, the first character you ever portrayed?
In what medium?
In, like, voice acting, like, in terms of television or whatever you want.
Or video games.
Just, you know, I'm generalizing here. Like, the first role you ever sort of just nailed down.
Well, you know, the first voice acting gigs that I ever got would have been, you know, non-union, low-budget things that I would have done in graduate school. So this would have been probably between 2002 and 2004 in South Carolina. Yeah, for things like promotional videos and commercials for radio and television. You know, pretty small time, just sort of regional or, you know, sort of regional stuff. My first union voice work would have been for a small, well, not really small, but a low budget independent feature film that I performed in called My Sweet Misery, where I played the lead character, but the lead character also was the narrator of the film. So I spent some time in the studio, you know, doing narration work, which was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. My first video game would have been into fall of 2005. I was directing gameplay dialogue for the first Saints Row game.
Wow.
There were a few sort of leftover roles that needed some voices. My boss at the time asked me if I would be willing to do it. I did it, and I you know, was paid separately as a union actor, which was great. And I had a blast, and I learned a ton, and you know, did a couple other sessions, you know, over the next couple of years, and then started doing it full time in 2007.
Saints Row. Wow, that's pretty cool, actually.
That is, yeah.
It's a fun, clever, funny game, and
very much so.
The voice actors in it are phenomenal. The writing is great. Saints Row is a real treat.
That's interesting. Saints Row. So, you know, the Clone Wars show has ended. pretty much. But if it was still going on and they asked you to return, would you like to return back? And yeah,
in a New York minute, hell yes. I would drop everything and race to the studio. I loved working on Clone Wars. It was incredible fun, incredibly creative work, great writing. The director was fantastic. Great actors. I got to meet and work with James Arnold Taylor, who's the voice of Obi-Wan, and I think it's Plo Koon. Is that the name?
Plo Koon, yeah.
Among others, and there are several other actors on the show that I did not work with on those episodes, but that I've worked with on video games like Dee Baker and Dave Fennoy, and
wow,
a lot of those cats. And you know, Star Wars is near and dear to my heart. The first movie I ever saw was The Empire Strikes Back. I was probably in preschool, and it had a really profound effect on my interest in things like science fiction and fantasy. I've always been a big sci-fi and fantasy fan. So I loved the Star Wars universe. The first birthday party I can remember as a child was a Star Wars themed birthday party where we had a costumed Leia and Darth Vader show up, and my young mind did not tell the difference between fantasy and reality so well at the time. So I, rather than being, you know, a well-behaved host to our guest, the Sith Lord, I instead organized a coup with my 6-year-old friends, and we got sticks and rocks, and we chased Darth Vader out of my backyard. He had to basically run to his car and drive away, and my parents apologized profusely for my behavior, but I at the time and to this day still see nothing wrong with what I did. He's Darth Vader. He's in my house. What did you expect me to do?
I would have done the same thing.
That is simply awesome.
Any good man would have done the same thing.
Exactly.
Very much so.
Yeah, but it was I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So.
You mentioned that you met a lot of the Clone Wars cast. If I might ask, who do you think was the most memorable person that you met there? Because they're all very, very distinct and very good at their craft.
I'd have to say James Arnold Taylor because, and not for any particular, you know, like difference in skill or personality or anything like that. He's just the one person who I knew by reputation, because the character voice acting industry in Los Angeles is quite small. So you sort of, if you don't meet everybody, you still know of everybody because there's so few names doing all the work. And James Arnold Taylor was a name that I had heard several times, but we hadn't actually met. So that was probably the most memorable meeting, just because, you're the guy that I've heard so much about, and getting to hear him work was really fantastic. He is very, very good at what he does. His Obi-Wan voice match is really pretty extraordinary, and he's an incredibly versatile performer. But while there, and a really, really nice guy, and I got to meet a lot of other nice folks as well, like the voice of Anakin. They were really great. And the voices of the other Trandoshans, and Cam Clark, who is the voice of one of the other Jedi Padawans. He's a voice from my childhood. I think he was Leonardo in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I'd met him a couple times before and seen him at auditions and stuff, actually competing for the same roles. I guess James Arnold Taylor is the short answer to that question.
That sort of segues into what I'm thinking. Quentin, what were you going to ask him again?
How did you get involved with the Clone Wars?
Really the same way most actors get involved with any particular gig. We have agents who act as sort of our liaison between us and our employers. Our employers, when they are casting a project, they notify the agents that they're casting a project. They send the details of the roles and the voices that they need to the agents. The agents then select which of their talent they think fits these characters, and they bring the talent into their recording booth or have the talent record auditions at home. So we basically record a sample of dialogue that the employer or producer provides them with. And we record that MP3, and they send it on, and then the producer or casting person or whomever looks through, basically listens to all the different auditions, and either selects the one that most fits the role, or selects a group that seemed to be close to the mark, and then has that group in a second time, maybe to be directed by the actual, show director, and then selects from that callback. I don't think I had a callback for the role. I think I just submitted auditions and booked from the first audition. And I don't know if I got the role because my audition, stood out so much, or because of some combination of the audition and, having a resume of a lot of video game work, and so they could see that and know that I know my way around a microphone and doing character work and creature voices and stuff like that. So, and then I get the call. They put me on what's called on a veil, which means I pencil it into my schedule, and I try to schedule any other work or appointments around that time, but I'm not locked in. Then they book me, and once I'm booked, I'm locked in. I am expected to turn down other work for that time. And if the employer cancels on me, technically my agent would have a claim to say, well, you have to pay him anyway, you booked him. Like, we are now locked in and committed. That usually doesn't happen. Even if they cancel the booking, for the most part, agents will say, okay, that happens, no big deal. Just try not to do it. But so booked, went into the studio, recorded it, then had some pickup sessions to correct some things that didn't go the way they wanted, or do some line changes. And and then you get the finished product.
Well, I knew a good deal of these. It's really interesting hearing it from your perspective. Thank you.
Yeah.
When voicing a character like the Trandoshan Garnac, is there a process to figuring out what the character should sound like, or does it simply sort of come naturally with a bit of script insight? That's what I was wondering.
I think it's a combination of things. Part of it is just intuitive, especially if they send you a picture. You look at the picture and you think, what is this? And then you just play. It's really, acting is such a funny thing. We have all these sort of mystical guru acting teachers of the past. We have our Stanislavskis and our Lee Strasbergs and our Michael Chekhovs and Stella Adlers and all these people. And acting can sometimes, especially when we talk about method acting, can seem like this sort of mystical, almost sort of spiritual thing that we do. And the truth of it is, acting, it's not easy, but it is very simple. At its root, as adults, we do the same thing that you did when you were 6 years old on the playground, playing cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians or whatever it is that you play. You immerse yourself in a fantasy world, and then you play until you find something that you really like. Now, granted, when actors play, they're playing with a pretty sharp tool set if they've got training and a lot of experience. But for a role like Garnac, I get a picture, I get a description, and I see this scaly, reptilian villain character. And I immediately go to things that I think would reflect this sort of scaly, toothy mawed carnivore. And I imagine, and it brings to mind sounds and qualities that are predatory, that are dark, that are very masculine, that are perhaps evil or animalistic. I imagine lizards clicking, hissing, growling, chirping, and all that sort of thing. And then I also recognize that, I know that my character is the antagonist of the piece. So I need to make sure that he has qualities that make us want to see him fail, that make us want to see him defeated, and make him not terribly sympathetic.
Right, but there is a bit of sympathy to his role, which is one of the reasons why he's one of my favorites of the series, actually, seeing as his son gets killed off in the story. So you brought a really good aspect to all of those categories. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I basically just tried to find a speech pattern that was rough, that was measured, and that had, at least until the death of his son Dar, a sort of coldness to it. You know, something sort of cold-blooded and reptilian, and a little superior, because the hunting is play for them.
Plus, he's the leader of the group.
Yeah. So it also had to have a kind of a confidence to it. And that's where I came up with this sort of rough texture for it, which is hard to do.
It was so awesome.
Things I did for the audition, and that I think there might have been a little bit of it in the in some of the scenes, was I wanted to showcase some creature sounds that were non-verbal, that were, him snarling, him clicking or hissing. So in the dialogue for the audition, I tried to work in snarls, or a click, which would be something like this.
Holy crap!
That was pretty cool. You still have that voice right down pat, even after all this time has passed.
It's definitely one of my favorite roles. That sound is the sound of the creature from the movie Predator.
The Predators,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
Yeah.
Or I think it's called a uvular trill, and it's when the uvula, the thing that hangs down, the little punching hangs down off your soft palate, back to your throat. You lift back your tongue, lower your soft palate so the uvula rests on your tongue, and then you carefully blow air through it, and then basically the percussive sort of slapping of the uvula on the tongue makes that click. It's also so it's the Predator sound from the movie, the same name. It's also it's also called a death rattle.
Mm-hmm.
When you're laying on your back, dying, and it's your last breath, your body relaxes, your tongue rolls back, your soft palate lowers, your uvula touches your tongue, and then that last breath comes out very gently, and then the uvula trills, and we get a death rattle, and it's unvoiced, so my vocal folds aren't engaged like they are when I'm speaking. If I take an unvoiced uvular trill, and I add voice to it, I get.
Then you'd be a Wookiee.
Yeah, like some Chewbacca going on there.
But the most fun part was the screaming. The screaming after Dar's death was really. It was hard and it was kind of painful on my pipes, but it was really, really fun to get to sort of go all out and take it up to an 11 on the meter. Especially
once you see the final product, I would assume.
Oh yeah. Final product was really, I was really happy with it. Favorite moment actually was a moment that had no voice at all. It was, but the animators did a great job where Asuka in the final fight against Garnac does a force push. Mm-hmm. Garnac digs his claws into the wooden floor of the hunting lodge and holds himself in place, fighting the force push. Because I really want. How do you fight a Jedi if you're not a Jedi? And he showed that he knows how, and that he's really good.
He used a very animalistic, impressively powerful fighting style, and that was something that made him so intimidating, just in the way he looked and fought. That was really cool.
Yeah.
So, Batil, do you have any questions?
I do have one more. I'm always sort of curious about this thing. How did you get started? What is the first step you sort of take to becoming a voice actor? I always think about that kind of thing.
I'm going to answer that two ways. First, I'm going to give you advice I would give someone, and then I'm going to tell you how I got into it, because we often find our way to our careers through kind of circuitous routes that we don't quite in a route that we didn't expect would get us to that place, or we find ourselves in that place, and it wasn't quite where we expected we were going to be, but life sort of took us there. So the advice I would give someone who wants to break into voiceover is, especially if it's going to be character voiceover, one, the first thing is train. Find great teachers. And one would think if you want to get into voiceover, you find voiceover coaches. But if you want to be able to compete with the best of the best character voice actors, a lot of these people also have extensive training in sort of traditional actor training and traditional voice and speech for the stage and dialects and movement, and they've had years in the theater and they've done film and television and improv and all this other stuff. So it's not the best advice I can give is get yourself into a voice acting class, but it also is sort of pat and a sort of narrow kind of advice, because the truth is, the people who are the best character voice actors, are often very, very well trained actors in sort of the general sense of acting for any medium. So train, and then market. Get yourself an agent, get your name out there, and take any work that comes along until you build a career and connections where you can start turning down the work that is not worth your time anymore. As far as my route, originally I wanted to be a theater actor, and that's what I did for a while. And then I wanted to be a film actor. And then I stumbled into video games. I basically, got my BA in theater, and then I came out to LA for 3 years and acted in some short films and started a theater company, and then I left LA and did regional theater and got my MFA degree in acting, sort of my formal conservatory training, which was heavily based in the classics and a lot of voice and speech training. Then I moved back to LA with after doing a couple feature films regionally, with the expectation that I would be a film actor. And 6 months after I moved there, I found myself 50 miles south of Los Angeles in Orange County, subletting student housing, making $12 an hour, 20 hours a week, which didn't pay my bills, telemarketing out of my rented, student apartment. And then I contacted an old colleague of mine who was working in video game voiceover production, and to say, hey, let's do lunch, thinking, well, maybe it'd be nice to see him, and also maybe I can get some. And as it turned out, he was not available to meet with me, but he needed somebody to cover him while he took a trip and do some directing and casting for him. He asked if I'd be interested. I said, heck yeah. The game was Saints Row, and I was good at it, and I ended up working for him full time for 2 years, and just basically quit acting completely to do this. It was time to jump ship, and I wanted to get back into acting. And by the time I did that, I had spent 40 hours a week in the studio studying, learning from, stealing tricks from, directing, and working with some of the best character voice actors in the biz, and a lot of whom have done work on Clone Wars. And so I sort of had this really great training that I kind of fell into. And I also had all of the animation agents in Los Angeles in my speed dial, because I had been, working with them, negotiating with them for the last 2 years, their talent. So when I said I was jumping ship, several of them said, hey, if there's anything, great working with you, if there's anything we can ever do for you, let us know. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, you can listen to my demo. And they did, and I got some interviews. I got represented by Sandy Schnarr Talent, who is now AVO Talent, and I've been with them for years. And not long after that, I got Captain Macmillan in Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, and that's the role that I'm pretty much, besides Garnac, most well known for.
A lot of people know you as that role.
Pretty much,
so.
Yeah. And the rest is history, and that's how and I took the Toyota Highlander campaign, which is what, put food on the table for about the next year.
Right.
And it was a really sort of circuitous route, and I did not get into acting to be a voice actor. And I never thought about pursuing voice acting because everyone says it's too hard. It's too into. And then when I had the opportunity and fell into it, I always considered myself very lucky and very grateful because it was a great career.
One last question I would like to ask is something that I was thinking about recently is voicing villains really more fun than voicing heroes? Because a lot of people have actually told me that, and I find that amusing.
Let me think about that. To me, it's all fun.
Okay.
But it's fun in different ways. Voicing heroes feels good.
Mm-hmm.
Guy who's striving against impossible odds, who's got a good heart and is trying to do the right thing. Something about inhabiting that skin leaves me feeling better than when I walked in the booth. I got into acting because I wanted to do these big dramatic roles, these Oscar moment kind of, roles. But they made me kind of miserable. And then inhabiting the skin of a fun character in a comedy felt great. And I couldn't get enough of it. So voicing heroes is a really kind of joyous, fun, pleasurable experience. But voicing villains as well is... I get to tap into parts of my personality that are forbidden, that I can't put on at the coffee shop or at the gas station or with my students or my colleagues, but things that are very uniquely human qualities. We are human, no matter how good or sweet or kind or gentle you are.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
You hate, you rage, someone cuts you off in traffic, and you don't get frustrated. You wish them dead, and it goes away, and maybe you're a little shocked that you had the thought, but you imagine them, careening off the road and their car exploding in flames. We're human, and that's what we do. It's not to make that happen, but it's okay to have the thought, and to sort of inhabit those skins and channel it can be really cathartic and even a little bit euphoric and fun. So, to wrap up the answer to that question, when I was a young actor, I had roles that were my dream roles that I really wanted to play. I wanted to play Hamlet. I wanted to play Macbeth. I wanted to play John Proctor in The Crucible. I had these roles that I really wanted to play. And then I got into grad school, and in my first year, I played Macbeth and John Proctor.
Wow.
So I got to play my dream roles. And you know what I found? I found that it didn't really change my life. It was just another part. And not long after that, my thinking changed, and I no longer had any dream roles. Every role that I was doing at that time became my dream role because it had unique challenges and things I could sink my teeth into to challenge me and to excite and to satisfy me. So that point of view really colors my answer to, do I prefer playing villains or do I prefer those?
All right. Well, thank you very much for answering our questions, man. We are going to have to probably wrap it up right about now. We've been recording for a little while. Thank you very much again. And I also apologize for being slightly quiet. I was noticing a bit of problems with the audio, so I didn't want to interrupt you too much. So, thank you very much once again, Zack.
Thank you, sir.
An absolute pleasure having you on our show, and it's really cool because even though the Clone Wars is ending, the spirit is still living on, and it's really, really cool.
This is Scott, and I thank you for listening to Clone Wars Weekly. Now, let the hunt begin.